This one is for 8 to 13-year-old goalies, or if you own an 8 to 13-year-old goalie. I know they had a 2-for-1 sale at the Walmart on them a couple weeks ago. If you picked yourself up a pair, this video is for you. Today I have for you the top 5 stretches that young goalies can do every single day. 2 reasons we're doing them. Number 1, obviously to help you stop more pucks. Number 2 is to help you stay loose and limber as you grow. You know that I don't often do videos or programs for little kids because I want you to just have fun. Your number 1 job as a goalie mom and dad or as a young goalie is to love hockey and for it to be a special treat, for you to skate on the ice with a smile on your face, skate off the ice with a smile on your face. If that's happening, you're doing everything right. These are 5 stretches that you can do. They're safe to do every day if you wish, because I know too, some young goalies, I was like this as a young athlete too. I wanted to train. I wanted to do all this stuff from the time I was probably, 7, 8 years old. So if you have that mindset, you can safely do these every day. Don't force the movement. It's just a routine you're gonna go through. Forcing it isn't gonna give you better results. If you're more like, I don't really wanna do stretches every day, that's totally cool too. Nobody didn't make it to the NHL because they didn't do a stretching routine when they were 8 or 9 years old. So I'm putting it out there for those of you who are like super keener beaner. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. And moms and dads, please don't, try to make your kid do it or say like, well, if you want to be the best, this is what you're going to do, because that has to come from inside. So you can only push an athlete so far. And in my experience, one of the saddest things is, a kid who was always pushed along by their parents, not because they're mean, but because they're really trying to help the kid make the most of, their potential. But then, it gets to a stage where the parents can't push the kid anymore, and then they're kind of lost because they don't have the internal drive. So, it's out there. If you want to do it, great. If you don't want to do it, that's totally cool too. The most important thing to me is that you love playing hockey. Now let's get to business and let me show you the exercises. Stretch number 1 is a half kneeling hip flexor stretch. And this is one a lot of you have probably done with your teams and in practice. But what you see is a lot of this. And you think like, wow, I'm really flexible this way because I hardly even feel a stretch when I do this. But what you don't realize is that you're actually extending your lumbar spine. So our hip joint anatomically doesn't extend this much. It only extends maybe a maximum of about that much. And most of us don't even have that amount of hip mobility because we sit all the time. In the front of our hips, those tissues adapt to what we're always doing, which is sitting, which puts them in a shortened position. So then they tend to be short and stiff. So what I want you to do is start just almost with this thigh in line with your torso. Brace a little with your abdominals. We cue some of our athletes just to like keep your ribs down, not crunch over, but keep them down a little bit, as opposed to, when you go into the stretch, kind of lifting, flaring your ribs. So keep your ribs down. You'll glide forward just until you feel a little tension in the front of your hip right here. You can also think, although sometimes it's tricky for little kids to get the idea, but you're going to almost tuck your bum underneath you a little. All you should feel is a gentle stretch in the front of your hip. You might feel it down into your thigh, but with this position, that's not exactly what we're trying to get. It's not wrong if you feel that, but you should just feel a gentle stretch in the front of your hip right here. So we'll do 30 seconds on each side. Do you remember about 10 seconds ago when I told you that the purpose of that stretch wasn't to sort of feel it in the front of the thigh? I hope you do, because it was literally 10 seconds ago that I told you that. Well, this one, the purpose is to feel it in the front of your thigh. So you have a couple different hip flexors. One of them is actually a quadricep muscle. So it crosses your knee and your hip. It's called the rectus femoris. There'll be a written exam at the end. We're going to hold this for 30 seconds each as well. How do we do it? Well, we kind of back ourselves into the wall a bit. So our foot is on the wall. Our knee is on something that's really nicely cushioned. This is like a what we usually call it in the gym is an RX pad. RX is actually a brand name, so this is a faux RX pad. It's from Pro Source Fit. I just ordered it on Amazon. But you're gonna put your foot on the wall, and I'm gonna come forward like this, because what I want to do is come out of the bottom, keeping my ribs down a little bit. Again, not gliding way forward with my hips. I'm here, I'm over this leg, and I'm gonna come up, kind of squeezing my bum forward until I start to feel a stretch in the front of my thigh. And that's it. From here, I'm not gonna, try to get more. I'm just coming up till I feel that I'm getting that by sort of bringing my hips through. Again, thinking about tucking my bum underneath a little bit. Some of you are going to be really tight, especially if you're growing, and I'll explain why in a minute. So some of you might just get to here and be like, oh, I feel that. Then stay there. There's no rule book that says, oh, well, you're doing it wrong because you're not all the way up. You go to where you feel sort of that medium stretch in the front of your thigh. Now we're getting into a calf stretch, because if you want to get sort of deep in your edges, you need what's called dorsiflexion. And dorsiflexion is this: when I bring my shin towards the top of my foot, that is dorsiflexion. So, and it's something that, again, is really lacking in a lot of goalies and young athletes in general. So we're going to do two different calf stretches. One with a straight knee that you're going to feel more sort of in the bulk of your calf. The other one is going to be with a bent knee that's just going to feel like sort of a tightness here in the bottom third, but they're both really important. It's going to be a 30-second hold for each. So exactly what it will look like is you want to make sure that your foot is pointing straight ahead. The natural tendency is to turn your foot out a little bit because you actually get more range that way. So make sure that your toe is pointing straight ahead, that your heel stays on the ground, and then for the first one, that back knee is going to be nice and straight. And you're just going to come forward with your hips until you feel a gentle stretch in your calf, and you'll hold that for 30 seconds on each side. Then you'll step in a little bit more, and now I'm going to bring my shin towards the top of my foot, making sure that that knee comes over my middle toe. So don't let the knee fall in either. That's sort of another little cheater move that we'll see a lot. So bending that knee, I don't feel the same kind of muscular stretch in my calf, but I just feel that tightness down in here closer to my Achilles. 30-second hold on each side there. In my entire career, I've probably only ever worked with a very small handful of sort of 11 to 13-year-olds, in particular boys that weren't tight in their hamstrings. So we're going to give you a little hamstring stretch today. Just getting the new lab set up. Don't quite have everything unpacked or organized by any stretch. So I'm going to use this old chair. This chair, little family history. This is the chair that I sat on at any family dinner at my grandma's house. And it was the chair that my grandma had at her desk where she used to sit at her typewriter and type letters. She was a phenomenal letter writer. Sometimes they would be blistering letters giving you heck for something you did. But this was my chair at family dinners because there wasn't, I was the last kid. So it's like, oh God, another one. What, we don't even have a chair for this kid. So that's where I sat. But here's the biggest mistake two big mistakes people make of all ages when they do their hamstring stretches. Number one is they will open their hips a little bit. So see how my foot is going this way, but my pelvis is aimed this way because it's actually not as tight. So if I'm this way, I can do this and I feel pretty good about myself. I feel like that's good flexibility in my hamstrings. If I do it properly and stay square, so now my leg is pointing this way, my pelvis is pointing this way, that's as far as I can get. I can't get nearly as far, and I feel a lot more stretch in my hamstring when I do it this way. The second thing you want to watch for is people want to touch their toes for whatever reason. Like they think their hamstrings know, oh, they're touching their toes. I should relax and stretch out a bit. But what that does is, again, it stretches your back. So same thing where we saw the hip flexor stretch. You're actually using your back and you think you're stretching your hip flexors. This is the equal and opposite. You're actually flexing your back, thinking that you're stretching your hamstrings. So we'll stay tall in our torso. We'll pivot from our pelvis. Notice my back position stays neutral, which means I'm not overarching or rounding it as I go. And you'll feel a lot more stretch. You don't need a chair at all to do hamstring stretch. You can just put your foot on the floor and come forward like that and get the same benefit from it. Guess how many seconds on each side? That's right, 30 seconds on each side. And the fifth stretch that I have for you is probably the only one you're gonna look at and say, oh, that's actually a goalie stretch. And that's because we've spent our time working on the muscles that cross the hips. If those muscles don't allow degrees of freedom, then your hips aren't gonna work the way they need to work. And this is just where you should start. But this one really is goalie specific. It will help you get a little bit wider butterfly flare. You have to promise me that you're not going to try to force this, thinking the harder I work, the wider my butterfly flare will be. Because we all have different shapes of hips. Some of us have hips that allow us to have a really nice wide butterfly. Some of us have hips that don't allow us to have a really nice wide butterfly. It doesn't mean we can't be a goalie. It doesn't mean we can't be a great goalie. We just have to learn to play to our advantages. This is how you do it though. You're gonna lie down on your back. You're going to have your feet just wider than hip width apart. And then you're just gonna use a little bit of overpressure to bring your knees in together. You're going to hold that for 10 seconds, then you're gonna relax. If you're not feeling any sort of stretch or resistance, it doesn't feel the same as when we put your foot on the wall and did that stretch. Like you felt like, I feel these muscles stretching. This one is gonna be more subtle, almost like when we did that bent knee calf stretch. Just feels like a little tightness or a little restriction. If you're not feeling any of that, then creep your feet out a little bit, just a little bit more, and then pinch your knees in together again, holding for 10 seconds. There, I feel a little bit of resistance at the end. I feel that I have to just apply light to medium pressure to bring my knees together. So this is a good position for me. I'll hold for 10 seconds, I'll relax. I'll do a total of 5 repetitions, holding for 10 seconds each. If you feel discomfort, pain, just a block, like my hips just won't go, I don't feel anything, but they just won't go, then leave this one out of the routine. So here's something you might not know. You might not know that when you grow from your bones. There's a growth plate on the end of your long bones, and that's how you grow. Your muscles know nothing about it. So as your bones grow, the muscles will, for a period of time, automatically be tight because maybe they're used to your thigh being this long. Well, then you go and grow and now it's this long. Well, now the muscle is that much too short for what it should be. So what we're trying to do is, muscles cross joints and they're going to increase the compression. So if they're tight, just because you're growing, it's going to increase compression in those joints. So we're just trying to do some stretches, some preventative, medicine, as it were, to help keep those muscles that cross the joints loose so there isn't so much compression. Because compression or even traction, like pulling on attachment points, that's what can give you things like patellofemoral pain syndrome, which is aching under your kneecap. That's compression. Things like Osgood-Schlatters and Seaver's disease, terrible names, I know. They're not really as serious as they sound, but that's from the attachments getting yanked on over and over again. So that's what this is about. This is about prevention and performance. And if you haven't seen the at-home workout I designed for young goalies, I'll drop a link in the description because that goes perfectly hand in hand with this. This is a great little flexibility routine that you can get started with, and that's a nice sort of strength foundation, stability, some agility work in there too, so I'll drop a link in the description. I also want to know, who I'm talking to. So if you're watching this video, let me know. Are you a goalie parent? Are you a kid? Are you 14 to 25-year-old goalie? Are you an adult league goalie? Just drop a comment below, let me know, because I'm always looking for ways to speak directly to you and deliver what you need and what you want to learn more about. So this is Maria from goalietrainingpro.com. I am an exercise physiologist. I specialize in off-ice training for hockey goalies. If you haven't subscribed yet, do that. If you haven't hit the like button, I'm sure you hit it like 7 minutes ago. But if you haven't, if you forgot, you got distracted, it's fine. Now you can hit it. It's fine. It still counts. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.